Hello, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to our second full and rich Churning and Writing retreat. I hope you enjoyed the first day, and I hope you enjoyed yesterday, a day of no online sessions, but a day of internal personal experimentation. And it's beautiful to see how we all come together. 124 are already in the Zoom, and we also see that in the YouTube channel. You go back to the recording and listen to the session we had already. So today we have Mike George with us, and I think he's already here. I think many, if not everyone, knows Mike George, but I will briefly introduce him. Mike is a very productive writer, I would say. I assume he has written most of the Gyan-related books. I'm not sure if that's true, but he has written 16 books, and some of the most known ones, I would say, are Being Yourself, Don't Get Mad, Get Wise, or The 7 Myths About Love. And what he's usually connecting in his writing is the aspect of self-awareness, emotional intelligence, and conscious unlearning. So we are very happy to have you here, Mike. Hello. I remember you when we met a few years before COVID, I think, in Berlin, and we had a nice coffee, and it was just beautiful to chat and churn with you together. So I'm very much looking forward to see what you have to share with us today.
Thanks, Caroline.
Sorry?
Yeah, go on. Sorry, I thought you'd finished.
No, I just wanted to ask you, please, to speak slow, because we have translations into a couple of languages. And yeah, not everyone is so familiar with English. Thank you. And now I hand over to you.
Great. Thank you very much. And a warm welcome to everybody. And thank you very much for tuning in. Just a word to the translators. If I do get a bit carried away and I get a bit fast, then you just give me a signal and I'll slow down, hopefully. So it's nice to be part of the annual, I think it's an annual retreat now. This is your second or your third, I'm not sure. Probably useful for me to say I'm not a natural writer. I don't find writing easy like some people do. And I, in a previous incarnation, I was a bit of a copywriter for a short period of my life. And the experience of copy, I kind of try everything. Had many jobs, and this particular job was very useful because it taught me how to write short, sharp, on point text, basically. So the first thing I would recommend to most people is to take a copywriting course of some kind. I think you can do that online now, yeah, and so it's very useful because it teaches you how to form and flow and stay on the point of what you're trying to say. And so it's hard work for me still to write. I take quite a while to write a book, and most of the books I write, I don't really write for other people. I'm kind of a bit selfish, really. I kind of write for myself. Ultimately, the book is read by other people, and mostly non-spiritual people. It aims to aim at that level where people are just kind of on the edge of they're ready to be more aware. They're ready to explore subjects like spirituality and self-understanding and self-awareness, etc. So I'm not really writing for the community as such, and so that's why I don't use jargon, and I try not to use jargon as much as I can. And that's pretty much all of it. But it takes me time, it takes me a while, and I'm a bit of a, from my copywriting days, I remember there was one owner of a very large advertising agency in the world. I think his name was David Ogilvy, and he recommended that you go over and over and over and over, and you just keep revising what you're writing. And all the time you're perfecting it, all the time you're getting it better, you're making it better. So I kind of do that, really. I do that with everything that I write. I go away from it, I come back to it, I go away from it, I come back to it. And ultimately, it turns out okay. I think. I hope. I haven't seen what's gone before on this retreat, the sessions that have gone before. So please forgive me if I'm repeating anything that anyone has already said or illustrated. And I think churning is an extremely interesting topic. We all know that we're encouraged to churn our own butter, as they say. And churning itself has two, I think, probably two main characteristics. There's a lot of stirring going on. is the movement characteristic, and then there's periods of stillness, of silence, and that's the time when the butter takes shape, really, when it's really kind of still and quiet. And so this retreat and this particular session is very much about the moving parts of churning, and the silence and the stillness. Well, you can get from many other sessions, but they are both important aspects of churning, clearly. So as always, I'd just like to take you on a little bit of a journey, and take you through my understanding of what churning and writing is. And in other words, I'm going to PowerPoint you to death, as they sometimes say. And the PowerPoints are really my churning on churning, if that makes sense. And so it gives you a few ideas, I hope, that might help you in your own process. So let me share my screen with you, and then you can give me a hard time afterwards, or you can ask me anything at all. I'm happy to take any questions. I don't do history and geography, but I'll do questions on just about anything else. So churning and writing, and I mean, these are just some ideas, or some ways to look at both together and separately. Some guidelines to begin with. I did a retreat, I think, about 6 months or 9 months ago for Europeans, and shared with them my five main guidelines, I guess, in terms of what's required to churn well, to see well. The first thing is to remember that you already know all you need to know. And this was something that was said to me very early on. You already know what you need to know. It's already in your intellect. And so it's like, okay, I'll have that faith. And sure enough, the more I dig, the more I churn, as they say, the more I realize what I already know. And the more I realize I already know what I need to know. And so everything else is just clues. Yeah, you roll up in the morning and listen to your morning Murli, and it's really information. It's just pointing you towards what you need to churn and see for yourself in your own consciousness. Don't judge your own thoughts as they come up, at least not initially. Every idea, every thought is valuable. And so there's no such thing as a bad thought, in a sense. I'll come back to that. But don't judge your thoughts. Don't throw them out too fast. And if you're writing things down, it's better, because then you can gather everything together on a container called a piece of paper. Be curious, be interested, be creative, be unlazy. Not easy. It sounds easy, but it's not easy to be unlazy for most people, because we're fed so much information in the information age that it's really, the creativity is done for us. The interest is piqued by the way that information is presented, and we're not encouraged to be curious ourselves too much, because then we might become too clever and we might start thinking for ourselves, and all of these make us a bit lazy. And so now is the time to get the intellect moving and become unlazy. Number 4, guideline number 4 is challenge everything that you hear, absolutely everything. You know, information, as I'm going to talk about a little bit later on, is like a raw material. And that raw material we receive, and it indicates what we should create in our consciousness, called belief. And so we tend to use the information, create a set of beliefs, and then give up. Yeah, and then we believe whatever authority then tells us, little realizing that we are our own authority, that there's only one author of our own journey, and that's ourself. So challenge everything, and that includes the authorities that you see immediately around you. Challenge everything they say, but quietly. You don't need to say anything, but certainly in your consciousness, you can do the challenging as you explore the information they've shared with you and the beliefs that they've encouraged you to have. And so finally, the 5th guideline is see for yourself. And this is always the challenge on any spiritual path, is really just work towards your own self-realization. Yeah, in other words, from the beliefs that you've been taught, been programmed by, to knowing for yourself, see for yourself, know for yourself. So you want to encourage yourself really to have as many aha moments as you can. And we certainly get enough material that points us in that direction. Churning, what it's not, first of all, when you're churning, when you're really looking deeply into something, you're not searching. And so this impulse to seek, oh, I need to churn, I need to find the answers. No, you're not seeking. In fact, real churning is not even thinking. It is that still, quiet voice inside. Part of the churning process is moving ideas around in your consciousness, but then allowing them to be still and to see what comes when they come together. It's not doubting. It's not doubting something. Some people get doubting and curiosity mixed up. Yeah. Oh, I doubt this. I don't get it. I doubt it. I'm not able to understand this. And so they're talking themselves out of their own clarity, their own understanding. So it's not doubting, it's not judging what's coming up. In other words, when you judge, there's this tendency to either accept or reject. And so this is what we've been taught to do. So try not to judge, you know, what feelings and thoughts are arising from inside, and certainly don't quickly reject things. There's no bad ideas. Yeah. There's nothing that is wrong per se. In the material world, we have laws which say right and wrong. That's fine. But in the universe of consciousness, there's no right or wrong. There is just thoughts, ideas, concepts, feelings, and they are on a spectrum of accurate to not so accurate. That's probably true, but it's not a question of black and white or right and wrong. So what you require to churn well is to be genuinely curious. Am I curious? Not resistant curious, not I don't like this, or what do you mean by that, or what's going on here? But this genuine curiosity when you ask a question because you want to know the answer, not because you want to change the other person's point of view or you don't agree with their point of view. It requires remembering. Everything is memory, really, and that's what we're doing right now, is we're remembering who we are, where we are, what we are, constantly bringing that back into our awareness. Yeah, and certainly we get enough clues about what it is we should be remembering from our daily morning Murli, as they say. You are required to see as opposed to think. To see, in other words, to realize, to see insight, sight in. In other words, when you explore your own consciousness, you'll start to have your own insights. Yeah, nothing is right, nothing is wrong. It's just an insight, sight in. And so see for yourself. Challenge, you're challenging ideas, challenging concepts 1 minute, just being quiet, seeing the next, just being quiet again for a moment, and then remembering what you've been told, putting them all together, and then hopefully what's arising is an aha moment. Ah, now I see. But you'll need to be quite patient. You might have to wait a little while before the aha moment arrives, before the realization for yourself arrives. And that might require a little bit of work, a little bit of what we might call work, but quietly, silently in your consciousness, getting on with exploring your thoughts and your own feelings. So I'm sure you've covered this already, you can start with a question and you seed the question in your own consciousness. And it could be such a simple question as, who am I? What am I? And then meditating on that question, remembering information you've been told and seeing if that is true. Well, if I've been told that peace is my nature, then what does peace feel like is the question. I meditate on that question and just watch the feeling, for the feeling to arise. And that feeling will be an aha moment, a moment of self-realization. Yes, it is my nature. It is true. That is true for me, for this point of consciousness. And so this is a very simple process of taking ideas. If you have to listen to other people's beliefs, which we do, of course, to see if it's true for you, turn it into a question, seed your consciousness, and then meditate. Let it go. Just meditate and watch what arises. And what should arise is the truth, as opposed to the belief. More about that a little bit later. When you're churning in the company of others, and we talk to each other, we discuss, we dialogue, we're questioning each other, we're exploring together. And so this is also a context in which a lot of churning takes place. And so in between what you're talking about and what they're talking about, you're feeling, is this true? You're reflecting on what they're saying. You're contemplating on what they're saying. So in a sense, you're churning on your own experience at the moment of listening or sharing or discussing with them. Yeah, so it's a combination of the two. One is very active, the other is very quiet inside. What am I feeling right now? Is what they're saying true for me? It's not that I need to say anything. It's not that I'm judging them. It's just I'm reflecting. Is this true for me? Now, the more you do this, the clearer your intellect will become. The clearer your intellect will become to see what is accurate and what is not so accurate. Yeah, the more you do this, the more you practice this. But if you're discussing to win an argument, if you're just backwards and forwards, then you won't be asking yourself, what am I feeling right now? And how does this sit with me? And so it's quite an art to be able to have a conversation and churn at the same time. So there's an experience there's a process of experiencing And there's an art of churning. And the difference between experience and churning is useful to know. It's not essential, but it's useful to be aware of. So when you refer to experience, you're always looking to the past. And a lot of people do this. They process their experience, or they ask other people to share their experience, believing it will be valuable for them. And it is valuable. I'm not saying it's not, but there's a difference between experience and churning. Experience tends to be an interpretation of a memory. Yeah, and so the memory is already in the past and it's being interpreted. And if it's your experience, you're interpreting your memory. And every time you interpret your memory, I don't know if you've noticed this, you interpret it differently. You see it differently. Yeah, and that's why it's not so valuable to rely on experience. Yeah, it's something that is merged within, but it's not so useful to bring it to the surface right now. And whenever you're sharing your experience, then there's this need to articulate, or if you're asking someone else to articulate their experience, then there's an attempt to describe it in words. So all the time you're moving away from the reality of that moment when there was a certain feeling or a certain insight or a certain aha moment. You're interpreting it, then you're articulating it. So you're moving from a deep experience from inside out. You're moving away. You're moving into expansion. And that's what the process of experience is about. Whereas churning is right now. It's looking right now without referring to experience. Experience is just a record of what's happened in the past. Whereas churning is to do with now. Whereas recalling experience is a process, is processing the past. So there's a difference between the two. I'm not saying experience is not valuable or useful, but it's not churning. Going over an experience is not churning. For me, might be for you, and that's fine. Everyone is different. Everyone's way in is going to be different. And these are just some ways in that you can, well, I don't know, they're just ideas. First of all, you can find a way in to what you already know just using one word. It's like, for me, it's like a window. I take one word and I begin to expand that word in my consciousness. Or you can take a concept, and there's lots of concepts. And you get concepts every morning, first thing in the morning. Yeah. And so you just take one concept and you can go through the doorway of that concept and see what it's connected to, basically. Understand what it's connected to. It's free flowing. You're not trying to control it in any way. It's just free flowing. See what it's connected to. Always useful to have pen and paper at the ready. You can elevate. In other words, you can just go into a state of meditation, and it's like that's elevating your vibration. It's refining your vibration in the art of meditation. And again, we practice doing that much every day, and that lifts you up so you can see more broadly or more deeply or more widely, whatever way you want to call it, whatever you are meditating on or whatever you've steadied your consciousness with. Just go into meditation. Or you can go to the penthouse. Yeah. And you might say that Baba or God or the source, whatever you want to call him, is able to hold the whole of the drama, everything in his, her consciousness at one moment. And so seeing the connection between everything, seeing the flow of the drama, accepting what's going on, realizing that, well, I could go on, but I won't. And so go to the penthouse and elevate your vision and imagine you're able to look down and see everything below. yeah, and understand what's going on below. Or you could go to the basement, and you know that basements are usually pretty dark. And so what you're doing is you're bringing light to that darkness. So there's a lot of, if you like, in the basement of the world today, in the drama of the world today, there's a lot of corruption, a lot of violence going on. So how does the understanding that you are cultivating bring light to that darkness? So you can use the darkness as a point, as something, idea that you are going to correct with the light of your consciousness. How could you correct it? Yeah, not fix others, not blame others, but how could you correct the actions that you see darkly in the world, in the drama today? In many ways, that's our role. So these are just ideas, basically, of ways into using your consciousness, and then realizing, seeing, kind of coming to that moment when, oh, I know this, I already know this. Yeah, it's familiar to me. I'm comfortable having this realization because I already know. Yeah, and so that's what you will be doing in the process. Seeing is sight in, having insight. So a couple of examples. There's one word I got very curious about some time ago, which was duality. It's been mentioned in the Murli a couple of times, but it doesn't get talked about a lot. But I was curious, duality, and I think the other word was dream. It's all just a dream. And so there are words you can use. And I went through the window of the word duality and began to really kind of look at it. And we use this word individual today. And in Latin, the original meaning of the word individual is non-dual. Yeah, in other words, the N really means non. I'm not quite sure why, but that was then. I mean, that was when Latin was around. And true, it's non-dual. Non-dual is our original state of being. But I was kind of exploring it in the context of now. And so individual means that there's lots of divisions within our consciousness. And these divisions guarantee that we feel as if there's more than one of me. And in many ways, spirituality is the healing of those divisions, those separations, if you like. So individual is the English word that we use now. To return to the non-dual, which is indicated by the Latin, which was then, in the past. So if there is no duality, then there is no opposites and no polarity. And now in consciousness, in a sense, there is no duality because consciousness is one. There's only one consciousness. There's only one me, one being, if you like. And therefore, there are no opposites, no polarity. That means there's no positive or negative in consciousness. But of course, in the corporeal world, the world around us, the world of the drama, there are opposites. And in fact, the tension between opposites is what makes the world go round, if that makes sense. What makes the drama, what makes it expand the way it does. It's this tension between opposites. So there are here and there, up and down, positive and negative. There are opposites in the corporeal world. But we know that we're not corporeal beings. We're beings of consciousness. But we create a language to describe these opposites in the world. You know, we create a language to describe the duality that we find in the world. And then we use that language, by mistake, really, to describe aspects of consciousness. And that's why we arrive at positive and negative thinking, positive and negative emotions, etc. But actually, there aren't any. So in the process of churning this in my own consciousness, I begin to awaken this idea of being a being of consciousness that has no opposites, that contains no opposites. And ultimately, I want to see no opposites. That in itself is worthy of some attention, as you can imagine. And here's another idea, another example of churning is to purify your feelings. And so you might say that that's really what we're here to do, to purify, to become pure, as they say. And so one of the things that we're purifying is our feelings. And so one of the things that we feel is our emotions. When you're emotional, you feel the emotional disturbance. The emotional disturbance, or the disturbance in your consciousness, that we call emotion. And it's quite subtle to separate the two, feeling and emotion. So how do you purify the emotions that you feel? Well, do they need to be purified, or are emotions natural? Is what we've learned from the information we receive from people and the world around us, that emotions are natural. You can't do anything about them. It's human nature to be angry. It's human nature to be scared. So they don't need to be purified, do they? This is when it gets very interesting. Then I have to ask myself, well, where do emotions come from? If emotions are something that I feel, and I'm the creator of all that I feel and think and do, then how do I create? What makes me create the disturbances in my consciousness that I call emotional? And that makes me go more deeply to look behind emotion to see where emotion is coming from. And if you do a Sherlock Holmes on emotion, you'll always find that the emotion is coming from some kind of attachment, something you're attached to. And it's really quite deep. Most sanskars contain some emotion. Most sanskars today, in our life today, not all, but most of them do today. The ones that we express or allow to be expressed today, they contain emotion. And behind most sanskars, or at the root of most sanskars, is an attachment. And that attachment is usually to a belief. And so if you explore your sanskar, you'll always come down deeper and deeper and deeper to see what you're attached to and to see the belief you're attached to. And we're in really subtle territory when you do that. So only the realization of what is true is going to purify the belief. So it's not a question of dealing with the emotion, of trying to fix the emotion or suppress the emotion or say the emotion is bad or wrong. Not a question of that. The emotion is what it is. It is a disturbance in my consciousness. But to get to the real root cause of that disturbance, it's necessary to notice the belief that I'm attached to, that is giving rise to it. You know, that I'm perceiving a threat to that belief. And it could be just, I could be arguing with someone else, and it's their beliefs are different from my beliefs. And so my emotion is anger, and that's because I'm attached to my belief. So the truth is, the truth that will set me free of the disturbance of the emotion is there's no right and wrong. There's just different points of view. And I have a different point of view, different belief, than the other person. And so I accept that their point of view, their belief is different. And so as soon as I accept it, then that belief disappears because I've realized what is true. So the truth purifies belief. So I'm talking in concepts here, words, ideas, and ultimately it's not about concepts, words, or ideas. It's about this very simple acceptance of the other person's point of view. And so that acceptance within me is very, very deep. Any resistance to that, and I'm going to experience a further disturbance. So these are just two examples of churning, of what you can do or how deeply you can go. But it is, as they say, quite subtle. So let's move on to writing. And writing this out is another question altogether. But first of all, you might feel inspired to write a book. And if you do, then the first thing you have to do is pick a topic or give the topic a title. And that may be something that you need to think about a lot, or maybe just occurs in your consciousness. I'm inspired to write about anger, for example. Let me do a whole book about anger. I can see a book, there's a book in that. And so then it's necessary to create a subtitle. What's the main idea that you want to get across? Or how would you describe what this book is about? Kind of the same thing, really. How would you describe what the book is really about? And so you're gradually pulling the attention of the reader into the book. Then you need to do your research. Research what's already out there. What other books on this topic are there? Who's writing what? But what's motivating you? You have to be honest about this. Is it that you want to be of service to others, or is it you want to understand more deeply for yourself? Is it because you want to be famous? Not a good idea. Is it because you want to make a lot of money? These ideas are not wrong. The primary motivator is what's going to get you out of bed in the morning and get you sitting. Now, is that motivator going to get you sitting writing regularly, consistently, to the end of the project, the writing project? Or is it just a passing kind of feeling that you're having, that you're enthusiastic about, and which will go, we'll move on, and you'll be left thinking, well, maybe not such a good idea. And so you need to be honest, explore your motivation. And then once you've clarified that, create a structure, and that might be chapter headings, and it might be a sequence that you initially feel is right, but you might change later. But essentially, you do need a structure. How do you break the book down? What are the main ideas you want to talk about? Write an introduction explaining why you are writing this book. That might include, very briefly, insights into other ideas about anger and why they're not accurate and not correct. And then write your first two chapters. And it's a question of just sitting there and think it through first. Do your brainstorming first, your blank page and pen first, and then write your first two chapters and see how they read, see how they feel. See if is there really a book in this particular subject? Or is it just me that's a bit over enthusiastic? Or is there more than one book or more than one subject? Or is it too complicated for me? Or do I know enough about this subject to be able to write a book? So all those questions will come up, and you have to meet and deal with all those questions. So once you've written a couple of chapters, show them to someone that you trust and to get honest feedback, to get fair feedback, someone that you know won't attack you out of envy or jealousy or any other reason, but will give you some honest feedback. And then be ready as you're moving through the process of writing for the structure to change as you develop it, as you develop your ideas, as you expand your own awareness and discover more of what you know on the inside. It's pretty much predictable that the structure and what you thought was going to be the content is going to change. So in essence, this is how you might approach writing a book. Articles are slightly different. Select a magazine or a publication that you know of, that you want to write for, Notice the other articles that are happening in that publication, in that magazine, and what's the average length of an article. Some are very short, some magazines are very short articles, some very long. And then pay attention to the subject matter. You know, if you're wanting to write about spiritual topics in a magazine which has got nothing to do with spirituality, then it's obviously not the right publication. So look around till you get the right one for what you want to talk about. And what you want to talk about will be the topic of your article. You know, what will be your topic specifically? Yeah, and is it of real interest to other people? These are checkpoints, really. And do you know enough about it? Do you need to research what other people are saying? Probably, to get an idea of what's out there, what people are saying about it, how deeply they're prepared to go, how deeply they can go in their understanding. Can you go deeper? Or have you got a different thing you want to say? Is there something unique about what you're trying to express? And so you're offering another point of view. And so how unique is it? Or is it just much like what everyone else is saying? So brainstorm your topic, and you can use the how, why, where, when, what, who process. Blank sheet of paper, stick these words on the top, and then start to answer the questions. You know, why is this? Why is anger so predominant? How does anger express itself in so many ways? And where do people get most angry? And well, what is it? What is exactly is anger, basically? And so you're kind of exploring the subject. You're brainstorming your ideas on paper. Or you might do what I do normally when I look at a new topic. So I get a blank page and I put the subject matter in the middle, and then I, all around it, start just pouring out ideas. No wrong ideas, no right ideas, just my own particular point of view, or points of view, excuse me, on that particular subject. And so you begin to get a picture, a bigger picture of what the topic is about. You see how much material you're beginning to get. And then, of course, you have to order these ideas. So which idea follows which idea, and you get a sense of the flow of the article that you might want to write. So order your ideas, write a rough draft. It's fairly logical. Leave it. This is what I do. I let it be. Go away a couple of days, come back to it, look at it again, improve it, lengthen it, add to it. And so then I leave it, go away a day, come back to it the next day. So I'm coming and going from it. That works for me. That's how I kind of do things. Whereas other people, they can just go straight at it and write it in just in one session, and it's already done. It just needs a little bit of editing and it's ready. It's not the way I particularly work, and everybody's different. And it's up to each one of us to find our own way. And then once you've got your first draft, it's just a question of polishing. Polish your draft and then submit. And you'll pretty soon get feedback from whoever you're submitting it to, whether it's an editor or a magazine or another writer or whoever. They'll tell you, especially if you ask for some kind of feedback. Yeah. So that just leaves us with a little bit of homework, and you can do one or two or three or do all three. It's up to you. But these are just ideas that might help you to explore some of the ways in. So think about your next book. What's the structure? What kind of structure would it have? In other words, what's the title? What's the subtitle? So play with it, play with the idea. And that might be something you do today or tomorrow. Or you could just churn. Maybe this idea would give you enough to look at. And it's the idea of yoga being the only way to absolve all your sins. What does this mean exactly? What is happening in the process of the absolution of your sin? Well, what is a sin anyway? What does absolution really mean? And so you can churn that and explore that idea or these ideas in your reflections on this very day. I think you've got a session this evening where you share your insights into that. And the third idea is if you want to write an article. So you have to decide what magazine you're going to write for, what's your topic, brainstorm your content, and then maybe, if you have time, if you feel the inclination, to write a rough draft and see where that takes you in the compilation of your ideas. So there's 3 ideas or 3 exercises that you could do today or tomorrow. Which might...
Mike, sorry.
Yeah, go
on. You promised us that we could ask you any questions.
Yeah, I'm just nearly finished.
Except for history and geography, and we would love to start that soon, if that's okay.
Yeah, I'm nearly finished. I'm nearly
Great.
finished.
Great.
This is me coming out now. I'm just saying, if you want to grab your screen, this would be a good time to do it. Screen grab, and you can take this away, and you can play with it. So you've got a session tonight. Happy chats in the session. Thanks for zooming in, and any questions, which I think we're going to do now. But if you prefer to send them by email, there's my email address at the base. So let me stop sharing and shut up.
Wow, this was like a big buffet.
Yeah.
So many thoughts and ideas. It felt like a Christmas buffet, and I think we can take like each one of the aspects that you talked about actually and go into more depth and explore it. So now we have a little bit of time for questions. So please put your questions in the chat if you have any. One question that I have that I would really like to ask you is about your personal relationship with the Murli, and maybe connecting with the Murli. I sometimes ask myself, because one of the first points you mentioned was know that you already know everything you need to know, kind of within. And sometimes I ask myself, is it enough for me to have just myself and the Murli, or do I need to do research and know what's happening like out there in the world, or can I really get everything from the Murli? And also connected with this, maybe quite recently, you wrote a book about spirituality and religion and the connection, or like comparing the two. So I would just really want to hear about your approach, how you listen to the Murli, and how your personal relationship with the Murli, and whether you feel the Murli is enough, or do you need something else as well?
Okay. So when it comes to the Murli, it's a container of information, and that information is pointing you in certain directions, and the Murli contains concepts and ideas about everything, about time, space, who you are, what you are, who others are, what happens, etc. Everything is contained in the Murli, but it's not enough. First of all, don't take everything literally. You know, it's spoken for a group of people back in the 1930s, I think, and it's been translated many times, and it's been edited many times, and so it's useful. It's very, very useful. It's essential, really, but it's not to be taken totally literally all the time. And everyone's number-wise in how they use the Murli in their own consciousness. But it's essential to also interact with people, to interact and watch the drama, to know how the drama is flowing, and all of those things, together with the Murli. And the Murli explains all of those things that I need to see for myself, understand for myself exactly how the drama is working, why other people are behaving certain ways, why they're criticizing and insulting and trying to control, when of course our natural nature is not insulting, is not criticizing, it's not controlling, etc., etc. And so it's like a combination of all these things. And that's why everyone's journey, everyone's awakening is unique and different at different times and different phases. And so it's necessary to engage with all of those things at this moment in time now. Now, I was very interested in the connection between religion and spirituality, because I began to see a lot of religiosity in the context of the organization. And so I wanted to kind of understand what's going on and what's the difference between spirituality, which is what we call ourselves or the organization, and what is this religiosity that seems to creep in. And so I wanted to separate the two and get a sense of the difference between the two. And of course, it's a line that you can't do black and white on. They're not opposites. Yeah, that's why I use the word tendency a lot. Spirituality tends to, whereas religion tends to. And so you begin to understand and see the differences between the two. But everyone's different. You cannot say this is not religion and this is spirituality, or it's not spirituality and it is religion. It's a mixture of the two. Some souls need to come very religious, and of course they express themselves because their whole programming and conditioning has been one of a religious background, and so they feel comfortable because there seems to be a lot of religiosity here within the organization, and very gradually they might waken up to the idea that spirituality has got nothing to do with religion. Very gradually, just like some people come with very organizing, I need to be doing and organizing and be organized, and so they're very comfortable in the organization. But some people are very, very family oriented, very sort of relational orientated, and so they're not so interested in doing, they're more interested in being. And so they feel comfortable quite, because there's a lot of yoga going on, meditation sessions, a lot of being. And so they're going to grow into doing more. Maybe they've been suppressing that, who knows? And so everyone is different. And so that's why the context in which they come into is okay for everyone. In essence, just to finish, the difference between religion and spirituality is religion, a religious organization, tends to say, you must believe this or else. Yeah. Whereas spirituality tends to say, don't believe anything, see for yourself. You see, and so you need to go into the meaning of belief and truth and knowledge. You need to explore this for yourself to see clearly what this is.
I found it really interesting to read that book, and I could always mirror myself usually in both like columns. It was interesting. Yeah. There is another question, many other questions actually. One person is asking, saying thanks. How do we remove the shadow of a past knowing, like what you heard from a senior?
You don't remove the shadow. Don't work to remove the shadow of your conditioning or your programming, and which is really a matrix of beliefs which have been implanted and grown by you in your consciousness. You know, what we're being led to do now is to realize who I am and what I am. Let's just stop there for a moment. Who I am and what I am. And they have nothing really to do with those past shadows. Those shadows will disappear on their own. Ideas will just dissolve on their own. Beliefs will just dissolve on their own when I realize the truth of who I am and what I am. So the more I realize that for myself, see for myself, the less power, the less energy, the less darkness will exist within the self. So it's not a question of working, oh, I've got to fight this, so this is not right, that's not wrong, I've got to get rid of that. Don't struggle with any of it, but just focus on seeing, realizing what is true for me right now. And of course, the Murli is useful in that. Makes
sense. There's another question that came earlier on. In regard to positive thoughts or negative thoughts, Baba advises us to have pure positive and elevated thoughts. please clarify this to what you have been sharing on positive or bad or negative thoughts, connected with what you were sharing earlier on. I think that there are no bad thoughts or, you know, like that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the Murli itself uses words and concepts, and you know, there's originally it's written and spoken for beginners. Yeah, it's like the 7 days course is for beginners. It's for new people. It's to get you over the first hurdles of answering these questions: who I am, what I am, where I am, and what's going on exactly. It's kind of a beginner's course, but the more you go into it, deeper you go into it, the more you realize that it's much deeper than what you heard to begin with. And so the Murli's a little bit like that. Bits of the Murli, you know, they're in a language that is just to help people get started, get going. But you need to challenge, this is what I was saying, challenge all authority, including the Murli. You are the only author of your journey. And so you need to challenge everything and see for yourself. See deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper as life goes on. Now, if it's just something that you're believing, if you just believe the Murli, beliefs are sleeping pills for the soul. Yeah, beliefs keep you asleep. They keep you unaware. They keep you stuck. This is why religious people tend not to be very deep in their understanding. Whereas what we're doing is that we're going deeper and deeper and deeper. And we have to articulate it in a way that is understandable, as simple, as clear. And this is our challenge, is to bring the depth of this understanding into some kind of articulated clarity. And that's what we're doing. That's where we're working. And everyone is working in different ways. So challenge everything, including what you hear in the Murli.
Great, thank you. Next question. Hi, Mike. What are your daily routines regarding writing a book? And do you use a specific computer program to type? So your daily routines.
Not so much daily routine. It's coming and going. More as I've already mentioned. I come and go from something. And so, I mean, my freshest time is in the morning. And so there's 2 or 3 hours in the morning where I might spend some time exploring brand new ideas. But I don't really have a set routine as such that I try and stick to. It's more if I'm not working, if I'm not doing something else, or I'm not distracted or whatever. It's more whenever I get the chance, I'll sit. And it's much to do with feeling as well. Feeling, if I feel as if I want to do some writing, then I'll sit and write. If I don't feel like it, then you know, or if I find it difficult to concentrate in a certain moment, then I'll give up and go and do something else. And so it's I'm sorry, I can't really be more specific. In terms of computer programs, no, I just use just Word basically. And then once I've completed the project in Word, or the book in Word, I translate it into PDF, and then upload it, and we're off.
Here's another question. When you write a book on spirituality topic, does it need to include the phrases from Murli, or it should be more of logic experiences in your day-to-day life? Maybe you can tell us, where do you take your inspiration from? Where comes your inspiration when you are writing something?
The inspiration comes from my own understanding, my own realization, from inside out, really. That's why I tend not to use jargon. You know, if you're fairly new in this particular journey, then there's a temptation to use jargon, which is a bit kind of lazy, really. It means you're not kind of working it through for yourself. And so you must put it in your own language and your own way of saying things. And that comes from your own understanding, which comes from your own churning, which comes from inside, really, comes from within. And so that's why it's better to start with articles, something short, something essenceful to begin with. and then move on to a book later on if but it's just no one right way. Again, it's everyone is so different. It's so different.
I think for many of us here, we would also not be thinking about necessarily articles or books because we are not writers as such, but it would probably be more just for our own growth and process.
Yeah. Just one thing there, that when you say you're not, most of us are not writers, everyone is a writer, everyone. And in fact, the way to realize that is just to do it. Just start writing. You'd be surprised. Yes, when you start writing, a lot of rubbish will come out, as it usually does. But gradually, once you get through the rubbish, you start to begin to see yourself flowing. If nothing else, keep a journal. Just write a paragraph every day, and just get used to articulating yourself on paper. Fantastic exercise, great for your communication skills, is to talk to yourself and then put on paper what you're saying to yourself.
This is great. It puts in context, because when I heard you talk about articles, I didn't relate because I don't see myself writing articles, but just even doing it for the self, for the purpose of clarification for the self, makes sense. Yeah, and even to write a book, even if it's no one will see it, it's still
absolutely.
my own. Yeah. There is a question here. I'm not sure if I understand it completely, but I will read it and see if you understand it. Purification implies a dichotomy process, and yes, it is worth to deepen what purification means and the consequences of this goal. Can you develop your understanding?
Well, I mean, everything
the question is in the chat. It's one of the latest questions in the chat if you want to.
Okay. No, I mean, everything we're doing is one word that can be used to describe everything that we're doing is purification. In other words, you're correcting everything. In other words, you're seeing the truth. The truth will purify belief, if that makes sense. So seeing and knowing the truth for yourself is purifying the concepts, the programming, the conditioning that is already in your consciousness that you've either accepted from others or you've placed mistakenly yourself. In other words, body consciousness. In other words, ideas that arise out of the consciousness that this form is me. And if you explore that, there's many ideas. And so those ideas are impure. They're not wrong. They're not bad. Don't start condemning, what is not accurate as wrong or bad, or I shouldn't, or I'm a bad person. I mean, then you just get lost in self-criticism, basically. And that doesn't help at all. It's a question of exploring what is accurate, what is true, what is right for me. Yeah, and for me, never mind anyone else. Stop watching others. Just for me, what's accurate for me. And so in this process that you are naturally purifying your consciousness. A pure consciousness will think very little, will be very simple in its expression, and be very quiet. Pure consciousness.
Wonderful. I think it's good to end with those words. And we will ask you, Mike, to guide us into a meditation commentary. But before that, Caroline has some announcements. Caroline, over to you.
Hello. Om Shanti. Thank you, Mike. Thanks for sharing what you shared. And I think this will give us a lot of food for today, and also the method to experiment with. We will meet again at 5 o'clock European time, 4 o'clock UK time. And we will then have time to meet in small groups of 4. We will organize it in breakout groups. But if you are in your center or a retreat center, wherever, with other people around you, you can also organize yourself to use the same exercise, use the time, and meet in person, and just be with us for the first introductory minutes, and then do the exercise wherever you are. That's also a nice opportunity. Again, we will upload the recorded session on the YouTube channel if you want to go back to some things, because I think what Mike shared was quite full and rich in many different aspects. So you might want to revise that. It will be uploaded in about an hour, so you can go back to it. And yeah, and then enjoy your experimentation. And Mike, you will share some thoughts for the meditation?
Good, thanks, Carolyn. Yeah, let's finish with a few moments of quietness. I usually advise people to look away from the screen, rest your eyes somewhere, and all you're going to do is relax all your energies, all your muscles. The tendency to be distracted by the screen, so be free of the distractions and go beyond the senses. Relax your body in the chair. Any points of tension in any parts of your body, just relax and let that tension go. And bring your awareness to your breathing and just focus on your breath. Follow your breath. You're still very aware, and you're aware of yourself. So just see if you can be aware of yourself being aware. And then using the power of your thought, just create one accurate thought about yourself. Very simple. I am a being of peace. Allow that one thought to very slowly move through your mind. Before you let it go. And notice what remains. There's a feeling of peace, of quiet, of calm. A feeling so natural, so easy. And in this moment, I know I am this peace. I am this quietness. I am this calm. And now there's nothing in my mind. My mind is still. And here at the heart of my being, there is silence. And in this silence, I can feel my power. And then I bring my awareness back into the room around me. But I bring with me the power of that silence as it fills my words, as it shapes my intention. As it creates my attitude to everything around me. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in, and good luck this evening.
Thank you, Mike, and thanks everyone for joining. Have a good day.
I wonder, Mike, thank you so much. I wonder if you could put the homework up just for 1 minute, because someone was asking about it in the chat.
Okay.
We usually put it up at the end of the session, and I know that some people they wanted to see it just for a few moments.
I've cancelled. Yeah. Okay. Here we go. There we go. And
Great. Thank you. So maybe everyone can just take a screenshot of this with their phones so we can let Mike go. Thanks a lot, Mike. I think this is fine. You should all have it now.
okay.